What do you tell the people of that country about the state of its government and the state of Iran broadly?
Well, I said everything is under control. We are certainly interested for de-escalation. We don't want war. We don't want escalation in our region. We are ready for de-escalation, but the aggression should be stopped first. The attacks should be stopped first, and then there is the possibility to talk, and we can consider that.
All right, well, more not so surprising updates out of Iran. Apparently, their government is now begging for peace. That is right. We just had the Iranian foreign minister come out and state that Iran would be interested in de-escalation and wants to resume negotiations with the United States just hours after major U.S. strikes on the country. I kind of predicted that too, by the way. I said they would be in their doomsday bunker as bombs are falling all around them saying, okay, we get it. You want to negotiate? Let's make a deal. What do you want? You would think it's a little bit late for that, although who knows? We've seen crazier things happen at the 11th hour. I think this is ultimately going to come down to what the Iranian people do in the coming weeks. If you see serious protests in an attempt for the people to topple their government, then I think the Trump administration is going to just sit back and let that happen. If that somehow doesn't materialize, then who knows, maybe you get some type of negotiated settlement made as a result of this. But for now, that is what Iran at least is publicly claiming. I would point out as well that this is coming just moments after it appears that their counterattack and retaliation in the Middle East against the United States and its allies largely was unsuccessful. Now, I'm saying that with a caveat because we don't have an estimate of casualties, whether U.S. soldiers were hit or not, but it does seem like the sheer force that some feared Iran might be able to do with its ballistic missiles did not materialize. The defense plan was somewhat successful, at least. And at the same time, it looks like Iran's strategy there was not all that smart, because we simultaneously have a bunch of random Muslim Gulf states who were previously neutral in this conflict now getting involved on behalf of the United States because they're basically saying, hey, we had nothing to do with this. Why are you bombing us? And so that's just a lesson in diplomacy 101 from the Iranian regime. But anyways, let's bring you this full update here again today, guys, on what kind of happened or what we know thus far about the counterattack. And now, after that largely unsuccessful counterattack, why the Iranian regime is begging for peace. That said, before I get into it, do us a favor, make sure you're subscribed to the channel down below, okay? That does a lot to support our work, and it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all the latest news and coverage. And that said, so let's, I guess, start here with initial reports out of Israel, where it does appear, especially even as compared to the 12-day war, that first of all, Iran did not even respond with the same level of missile intensity as they did last time. Like, Iran literally ran out of missiles. And secondly, the joint U.S.-Israeli defense plan, thus far reports are, appears to have been largely successful. Take a listen to yourself, for yourself, as to why many fewer rockets this time are even coming from Iran than were expected.
It's a great question. The Iranians do not have the same capabilities they had during the 12-day war last June. Oftentimes, they were overwhelming Israel's missile defense systems, and you saw these ballistic missiles here in Tel Aviv. And I'm just listening to these interceptions on the outskirts of the city as we're talking now, Brett. Those missiles are being intercepted even at this moment. But last year, when they were able to overwhelm missile defense systems, these missiles were slamming into buildings in Tel Aviv. More than 24 people were killed. Rescue workers at the scene digging through the debris and the rubble. We've not yet seen those scenes this time. That's in part because of the coordination at the highest level. President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ensuring that there were months of preparation ahead of this operation to not only prepare offensively, but also defensively. The second thing has to do with the immediate strikes early this morning. We reviewed some video from the Israeli Defense Forces showing how they went after Iran's ballistic missile launching positions in the western part of their country. These are the missile launchers that they use to target central Israel. They largely are protected. Sometimes they bring them out from underground. The Israelis were using drones along the coast just next to the Persian Gulf to monitor this situation in the days ahead. And they want to, every single time they see a missile or a launcher be taken above ground, hit it right away. And that's exactly what they have done. And this current hour, it has suppressed a lot of the incoming fire. We know, according to Israeli officials, they say dozens of Iranian missiles have rained down on cities today. But again, that is far less than what we saw last summer when the war erupted.
Now, look, I don't want to get too arrogant or ahead of myself because we don't know whether more missile strikes will be coming, what the current casualties are, if there are casualties on the American side or in the Middle East. But I do think that it stands as ample evidence that Iran's ability to wage war is largely collapsing. You're basically talking here about a paper tiger. Because how is it that at this moment in time, right, this you could argue is the biggest crisis and biggest threat that Iran as their government has faced in its entire history, right? Now America is openly saying, we want to do regime change in your country. And somehow you muster even less missiles than you did during the 12-day war when that was not as much of a threat. Seems to suggest to me Iran is out of missiles, right? They're flat broke. Their economy and their country is just utterly failing because they spent so much money and invested so many resources over the years into waging regional wars and terrorism, and it all completely collapsed and fell apart. And now you're left with actually very little capacity to defend themselves, right? You know, there's a lot given to Iran about how, well, they're one of the more powerful militaries in the world, the Araghchi, they have an air force and all that. But I mean, I would point out they can't even keep their air force running because they don't have the money to even fuel the planes, as one example. So, you know, this is really the type of country we're discussing. Again, I'm not saying that to be arrogant or kind of overstate maybe our hand in this situation. I am just pointing out from a military logistics perspective, it doesn't seem like they did all that well, at least thus far. In fact, it appears that the only major targets they were able to hit substantially did not take place in Israel, but in other Gulf states bordering the region. Now, bear in mind, these are historically the Sunni Arab monarchies that do not like or support Iran, but they were thus far neutral in the conflict. Iran basically provoked them for absolutely no actual strategic reason, and that has resulted now in countries like the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia now announcing they have joined U.S. operations against Iran because of the fact that they're now getting shot at for, again, we ask really what reason. And so U.S. intelligence officials are noting this is a big mistake by firing on Arab coalition partners because you only further isolated yourself and made more enemies than you had to. And that includes other Muslim countries now. Take a listen.
What I can say is new right now. We're just getting word that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia says they will join the U.S. in the operation against the Islamic Republic of Iran. They said that this comes in the wake of Iran attacking the U.S. base in Saudi Arabia. I just spoke to a senior U.S. official who said the Iranians made a big mistake by firing on Arab coalition partners. Now they are likely to respond. So by Iran firing missiles at UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan, they are now likely to fire back at Iranian targets. So those coalition partners are now going to enter this operation that started off as a U.S.-Israeli operation. That is very, very significant, and we haven't seen that happen in the past.
And I think this is an important point to notice, too. We've addressed this, but you have a crowd of people who's going to say, this is all about Israel. Everything that American foreign policy does is just to support Israel and nothing more. But you notice that even the other Muslim countries in the region are joining us against Iran. And there's a very specific reason for that. It's because of the fact that the Iranian regime is not only enemies with Israel. Okay, they spent the past several decades basically provoking and causing problems with every single major country in the region, right? They're not just some innocent victim in this. And I understand you being skeptical about regime change or whatever, but I would just point out, okay, this is not a story of like Iran just has stood around for years doing nothing and all these countries just keep on attacking them. No, they've set up all these proxy militias across the Middle East that are not just intended to destabilize Israel, but also to destabilize many of the Sunni majority Arab monarchies in the area. So this is to say Saudi Arabia hates Iran now just as much as a country like Israel does. Actually, as a matter of fact, a huge uniting force that created the Abraham Accords. The reason Saudis and UAE and all those countries agreed to the Abraham Accords, and even Egypt too, by the way, is because these countries realized Iran is the real problem. They're the ones who keep provoking all the problems across the Middle East, and now you see it as it is the case, right? Many of these Gulf monarchies are perfectly happy to join in the conflict against what they also see, likewise, as their greatest enemy. And so, when you talk about regional stability, you can argue all you want about Israel, but it's just a fact that when you spend years setting up these proxy terrorist militias across other people's countries, don't be surprised when those other people's countries also come back and say, okay, we don't like you either. We're on the side of the US, actually, as a matter of fact. So I think that's basically what you've seen. As I said, Iran could be avoiding this whole scenario if they had not spent so many years funding war and funding terrorism instead of funding their own citizens. They wouldn't be dealing with domestic protests either, by the way. But when you're this ideological fanatic who just believes in some type of crazy Shia revolution across the whole region, and then the whole region gets pissed at you, I don't think it's exactly so easy to cry the victim there. I don't know, I'm just saying. But all of that in mind, so you're seeing this. Now, the other countries are teaming up against Iran. The missile strikes in retaliation, we don't know fully, but thus far seem to be a little bit underwhelming. That is exactly when Iran's foreign minister, a guy by the name of Abbas Araghchi, went on NBC News today to basically make an appeal to Westerners, and that included him stating that he would now be open to negotiations. Yeah, we just bombed their country. We are calling for their people to rise up and revolt, and they want to negotiate. Definitely portraying strength, by the way. I don't think so. Take a listen.
Sir, are there any back channel talks, any communications that are taking place right now, or are those done? And separately, can this be de-escalated, and how?
Well, there is no communication right now. But if Americans want to talk to us, they know how they can contact me. We are certainly interested for de-escalation. This is not our war. This is an imposed war against us. This is a war of choice by the United States, and they have to pay for that. And they do. But as far as we are concerned, we don't want war. We don't want escalation in our region. We are ready for de-escalation, but the aggression should be stopped first. The attacks should be stopped first, and then there is the possibility to talk, and we can consider that. I'm not promising anything because our people are very angry right now. So if the war is stopped, if the aggression is stopped, then we will see how we can, work for de-escalation.
Yeah, so translation, please stop bombing us. We're willing to talk, right? You can't make that up. And then I want you to take a listen here too, as the foreign minister proceeds to answer a question about the whole nuclear negotiation, and likewise tries to argue, look, with the negotiations were going good, we're willing to talk, blah, blah, blah. Because you seem to notice more of the same pattern here.
Sir, just days ago, you had said that there had been a semblance of an agreement between the U.S. and Iran, and a way to avoid a war, if you will. What specific concessions was Iran not willing to give up?
Well, on our nuclear program, we made it clear for the American team that we are prepared to do everything in order to prove that our nuclear program is peaceful and would remain peaceful forever. What we are not prepared for is to give up our right. We are not giving up our right, including for enrichment, but we are ready to build confidence on our nuclear program, to make sure that our program is peaceful and would remain peaceful forever. For that reason, for that goal, we offered good concessions to the U.S. team when we met them last Thursday, 2 days ago. I may go into the details of those concessions in another program, perhaps, in order for the whole world to understand and for Americans to understand that we were progressing. We made significant progress. we agreed to do enrichment only based on our needs, the needs of Iranian people. I can tell you one of our needs. It is a Tehran research reactor, and we can accept, robust verifications and monitoring by the agency, and we can even do some more confidence-building measures in order to, make sure, as I said, that everything would remain peaceful. So I see the possibility to, reach a deal which can guarantee that Iran's program is peaceful.
Yeah, so now they're basically swearing to that they don't want a nuclear weapon at all. They just want to have a nuclear reactor. Think of that what you will. But you'll notice a pattern if you watch this whole interview is that the foreign minister is clearly almost trying to portray this confidence in the sense that he's just so calm and chill about all of it, right? No, everything's fine. We're going to talk again. Our heads of state are still alive. Everything good. We just want this all to end. Which you have to wonder if that in itself is almost a defense mechanism, right? For the government to just pretend like, everything is going okay. Which, by the way, he did say that in this interview, right? He literally said to his people, everything's okay, everything's under control. Meanwhile, I think the possibility that this marks the end of this current Iranian regime is certainly not non-zero. Taking a look, for instance, at the prediction markets on Kalshi, it's giving it over a 50% chance that by the end of this year, the Ayatollah, the current supreme leader of Iran, will be out. I mean, we'll ultimately have to wait and see there. But yeah, certainly I'm not sure if we can... As bombs are falling all over his country, he's acting like everything is fine and we want to talk, and he's telling his people, oh, nothing to fear here. Everything's perfectly normal, right? It's like Leslie Nielsen in that one movie. Right? Nothing to see here, nothing to see here. But anyways, that said, guys, there you have it. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. By the way, let me know how you think this will all end, right? Does this end in the regime change brought about by the people? Does this end in a negotiated settlement because the regime change doesn't materialize? Let me know your kind of prediction there. Let me know your thoughts. Be sure to leave a like on this video. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. And until next time, God bless and peace.